My name's Marissa, and I live here in Denver.
My name is Gerardo Munoz. I'm a public school teacher in the city of Denver. I teach high school social studies.
My name's Cecia Guadarrama Trejo, and I'm a housing organizer with 9 to 5 Colorado.
How do you feel in public? After the shooting that happened in El Paso, I've definitely have felt more concerned about the spaces I'm in, specifically like crowded spaces. I think because of the country we live in, I've always been thoughtful about what would happen if there was an active shooter.
I feel pretty exposed in public. There's a lot of anxiety, since these events have happened in the past months and years. And it's scary sometimes when you're just out in public feeling really exposed. I don't know that that's something specific to being a Latino, but I think that just the climate around us where you feel like literally anything could happen at any time.
I definitely tried to make sure that, some of the things that are happening in our community, that I don't just think about that and have to stay positive, but I also think that I just try to be more aware of my surroundings, who I'm with, where I'm at, and, just maybe making sure that I feel safe.
Do you avoid going to certain areas or places? Yes.
I've spent a ton of time since the shooting in El Paso reflecting and thinking about what it means to show up right now. I think a lot about the students that I taught, all of whom were Latino. And I think about what it means for me to set an example for them and what it means for me to show up.
I grew up in a neighborhood where it was dangerous, but I probably feel more vulnerable now than I did then. And so I avoid going to a lot of places, and definitely not by myself, and definitely places where I know that people like me aren't always viewed as being welcome.
But I would say that I definitely find myself now being more cognizant about where's the nearest exit, and just being aware of my surroundings, making sure things like my phone is charged all the time.
And I'm not gonna stay quiet, and I'm not gonna take a step back, because I deserve, and my students in our community deserves to take up space like everyone else does.
Has there been an instance where you felt someone has looked at you differently? Yeah, so most of the time it's just a matter of the tone of voice people use with you. And I remember this as a kid with my Mexican father, who spoke English as his second language. He had an accent. Like he always said, I might speak with an accent, but I don't think with an accent.
I've shared my story as an immigrant many times. And I've had times where in the comments section of the stories I've done, I think specifically about an instance where a gentleman say, well, I would end the problem of people like you by putting a bullet through your head.
I have an advanced degree. I've been a teacher for 2 decades. I believe I'm somebody with a good reputation in my community. And so it's always a little shocking when somebody just talks to you like you're nobody and like you're nothing. And maybe others have this experience regardless of skin color, but I've seen a pretty big correlation between my experiences and who people perceive that I am.
We know that the Latino population is one of the fastest growing populations in the country, but I also think about the history of for our ancestors and folks who, we've been here for a long time. It's not like we're a new group of people.
Do you feel differently because of the current culture and rhetoric toward the Latino community? I think if you are a Latino, I think if you're an immigrant, there has always been a fear that who we are and what we represent to a lot of people is something that naturally incites some hatred towards us. And so, I don't think it's necessarily changed.
And then I feel the same thing happens to me sometimes, particularly if I'm out on my own. If I'm with my family or with friends, it's usually not that much of an issue. But when I'm out on my own, I feel like there's a certain tone of voice people use with me, some impatience, some sort of condescension that I get.
And I do feel like the rhetoric against Latinos has increased, but that's not new. I remember, reading in history in class about Mexicans and dogs are not allowed into a restaurant. And so that's not new. It might be new to somebody who has never heard about it before. But now I think with social media and the way that things are so in your face, the rhetoric has changed, right? And I know that when I walk into a room, people see my face, people see my color, people see the identity I have as a woman of color.
Has your life changed because of the current culture? Yes, without a doubt. So in education, when there are troubling current events that happen sometimes, a lot of times we'll talk about how this is a teachable moment. So whether it was the invasion of Afghanistan, whether it was a stock market crisis, those kinds of things, we started having these conversations about how this is a teachable moment. This is an opportunity for us to really be there with our students in our community, listen to what they're saying and how they're feeling about what's going on, and then try to guide them towards solutions and positive thinking around it. This doesn't feel like a teachable moment. This feels like an organizing moment.
I think I continue to take some pretty big risks, and I understand what it means for me to talk about being an immigrant, talking about being a DACA recipient. And to me, I feel like it feels really important to continue to talk about it, because I think it's really easy to hate someone who you don't know.
Yes, like every day now I wake up and, there's a new tragedy, and most recently happening to our folks or when it happens in the Latino community, to the Latino community, or to people of color, it's horrible to wake up every single day and hear different news. And I'm also worried about just becoming how folks are kind of desensitized, because it happens so often that now, it's normal to say or see a backpack that's bulletproof or things like that, where I think when I went to school, that was not the norm.
Do you talk to your family about this, and how? I talk to my family quite a bit about what happened in El Paso. I grew up really close to El Paso, just 5 hours away from the US-Mexico border. And the shopping center where this shooting happened is one that I'm pretty familiar with. And, we talked about what it means for me specifically in my role as an advocate and as an organizer to be public about my story, to be public in my defense of our community. And, my dad asking me to not do interviews anymore.
Definitely, we do. I have, younger siblings and a lot of youth that's in my home. And so I think, with my siblings, they just ask a lot of questions, and I try to be as direct and honest as I can. But we also try to maintain our faith, as people of faith, that, we also have to have faith in God, and that we also do have to be aware of our surroundings, and that we have to have conversations about what does an emergency plan look like, or what does it look like, if something happens, and what do you do, and what are kind of the things that you have to pay attention.
My family, both my family through marriage and my own immediate family, my extended family, we're all over the political spectrum. But one thing I have found really wonderful about the people in my family circles is that we are able to say our love for each other transcends anything that's happening in our political views. And so I've been very pleasantly surprised to see how many members of my family are really listening and really doing their best to make the world a better place around us. I feel like that's what we all should be doing at this point. But the conversations are always happening. We try to not speak out of fear and anger as much as possible, and try to speak out of a sense of optimism and possibility. And these are hard times in my community, but I do believe that we'll stick together, and I do believe we have enough allies to overcome this.